There you see our players, Connor Mullally, Nicholas Odenheimer, opening up round one of Spotlight Series Secret Lair. Looks like Odenheimer is on the play where you want to be with this Boros energy deck.
Ooh, has a land drop, but no one drop on one. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, this is a closed deckless tournament. You know, this is a Spotlight Series, not a regional championship. So maybe you may be a little bit more inclined to mulligan if you knew the matchup. You'd want to have a one drop, but here we see a fetch for a Surveil land. Could have something like a turn 2 a Johnny and be off to the races that way.
Right, and this turn 1 Urza Saga from Mullally is really signaling that this is just suspend to Amulet of Vigor.
Right. And Odenheimer quickly fetching on turn 2 down to 18. We'll see what the turn 2 play is. A few different options with that Voice of Victory added from Tarkir Dragonstorm. There's a few powerful cards Odenheimer could have on turn 2. And it is going to be a Johnny and a Coddle Pariah. And
this is one of the cards from Modern Horizons 3 that isn't really an energy card, but is what makes the sort of zoo plan of the energy deck so viable. It is 2 bodies, it's 3 power. This is just the best Watch Wolf ever, and it also is a ton of damage upstairs pretty fast.
Yes. A member of that cycle of these Origin Planeswalker cards that transform into a Planeswalker. Huge play on turn 3. Thraben Charm answering Urza Saga. Mullally, no mana there to make a construct. Not going to be able to get that amulet.
How you feel about Strip Mine?
Big fan. Sinkhole.
Oh, no, you're so right. Oh, no.
All right, Mullally's going to set up a little bit. There's a Crumbling Vestige into our Boreal Grazer. Simic Growth Changer will pick up the Vestige. So some mana development for Mullally.
Ooh, Arena of Glory. All right, so this means that Odenheimer is going to be so much better at applying like surprise pressure to Mullally here.
Yeah, some potential hasty threats in the future. There's an attack. Our Boreal Grazer jumps in front of the cat and the Seasoned Pyromancer, possibly adding some bodies to the battlefield. And indeed, looks like another Pyromancer and a Flage discarded. That's going to bring 2 elemental tokens.
Ooh, is that card number 5 and a Flage with an Arena
with an
of
arena
Glory?
on the battlefield and 2 draws looking for that 4th land.
Localized entirely in Odenheimer's kitchen?
May I see it? All right, Mullally is looking for something big to make up for that destroyed land. I almost said missed land drop. Hasn't been doing that.
So this is the strength of Mullally's Amulet Titan deck, is that it's possible with an Amulet or 2, he could win from here.
Yes. Crumbling Vestige is the land in hand. With the Simic Growth Chamber on the battlefield, you wonder if maybe there's another bounce land available as well. Doesn't take a lot to really start making a ton of mana.
And you can see it on the players' faces. This is kind of a tale as old as time. In Modern is your Amulet Titan opponent untaps, and they start kind of tapping the table doing counting while looking at their hand. And you can see Odenheimer crossing the arms, just saying, all right, well, I'm pretty sure you're dead next turn. So am I dead this turn?
Right. And that's always the question playing against Amulet. You might think they're trying to navigate, all right, what's the best thing I can do this turn? And the question they're really always trying to answer is, can I win?
Yeah, right, right. Okay, so just transmuting into Lair West and off that Crumbling Vestige that Mullally's been moving around a bit. Unlikely to kill here.
This is a lot of sorcery speed mana. Yeah, like you said, unlikely to kill. Lair West will often be finding Summoner's Pact in this spot. We'll see if maybe he needs a land, though. Transmuting the land for a land is, I imagine, a lot of what Lair West was designed for, but notably from the same set as the Pact Cycle.
One of the interesting things about the evolution of Amulet Titan over time is this deck has always had a ton of redundancy. It's whether or not it actually has the time to commit to spinning its wheels and tutoring like this, right? We can see the pressure that Mullally is under at this point. So taking most of a turn off to transmute to Lair West to search for any of, 33 cards in his deck sounds not that bad. But look, Flage is representing at least 12 damage here, and Mullally's just passing back.
Yeah, finds Summoner's Pact and passes. We'll see if Odenheimer has the 4th land, because that would be huge. It would mean escaping Flage, I assume shoot down the Grazer, attack. There's still 9 more points on the Flage. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So this is a bingo if this all works. There is the 4th land. There is Escape Flage. Target the Arboreal Grazer.
All right. Grazer to yard. I have a feeling Mullally will be joining it.
Flage trigger upstairs. Mullally to 13. Players are going to check the math on this 13 power attack, and yeah, Mullally has confirmed that Nicholas Odenheimer has won game number 1.
And that game really is kind of the recipe of this Boros energy deck a lot of the time. We say Odenheimer with a turn 4 kill, 1 piece of disruption. That's just what this deck is good at consistently doing.
Yes, and that sinkhole, that Thraben Charm on the Urza Saga.
You started to say strip mine.
I did start to say strip mine. Players are going to sideboards here, though. Mullally will be on the play for game number 2. Does he have some tools on the sideboard to help him out here?
Yeah, so a lot of what he's going to be doing is not really trying to disrupt the formula of his deck too much. We spoke a bit in the pre-round conversation about how high synergy Modern is. You don't want to trip over too many disruptive pieces. But there are a bunch of sweepers in the form of Fire Spout, in Pyroclasm. I think we could see Radiant Fountain even come in here as a way to just buffer a little bit of life in a pinch. That's something where it's a good way to get out of Goblin Bombardment range if you end up in a position where you aren't literally killing your opponent but are able to develop something like a Primeval Titan. Castle Garenbrig is also a card I could see Mullally reaching for, where it does just help you cast Primeval Titan 1 turn sooner. I think in the post-board games, you end up being a bit worse at just comboing and completely killing your opponent out of nowhere, and Mullally is going to want to posture a bit for passing the turn more frequently.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And for Odenheimer, the Boros energy side of things on the draw, what is he going to be reaching for?
In a lot of ways, Molten Rain. And sometimes talking about sideboard, you set up to say some smart thing about posturing and passing the turn, and sometimes you just go, well, you saw how good Sinkhole was game 1. How about more of them?
I'm a big Lava Spike gamer, so I'm a big fan of keeping it simple, stupid.
No, this is nice. This is Dual Deck's Molten Rain versus Radiant Fountain.
Love
right?
it.
They are just 2 sides of the same coin.
We've been talking a bit about recent shakeups to the Modern format, and I expect we will see a little bit more in the way of change with an upcoming set. Final Fantasy is coming out very soon. You can pre-order the Final Fantasy Crossover Universes Beyond on StarCityGames.com/MTG-Fin. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan.
The set is so charming.
You see the icon here, Sephiroth versus Cloud. This is my adolescence. This is a game that I have played to completion in 4 different decades.
Oh, that is so nice.
I love Final Fantasy VII. I'm so happy to see it lining up with Magic in this way.
Right, this is something where I personally am not someone who really has the same connection to Final Fantasy that a lot of other people do. I had a PlayStation when I was a kid, could not afford a memory card, so I played the first disc of Final Fantasy VII like 5 times. I would just leave the thing on for days to be able to finish it. So I know that pretty well. But the set has a lot of charm to it and so many things that watching it kind of get previewed and watching huge fans of this series go, oh, these 2 cards work together just like in the games has been a real, real joy.
Yes, and the set will be covering Final Fantasies 1 through 16. So if you're into the newer games, those ones, you know, I'm a bit of an old head, but I love that the set does appeal to fans of the more recent installments in the franchise as well.
And something else in Odenheimer's sideboard that I really liked was that he had a bunch of artifact and enchantment removal that I think is going to be pretty nice here.
More sinkholes.
Right, exactly.
Answers to Amulet, of course, pretty nice. We see Mullally, I believe, is on a mulligan 6. It just opens up on a forest, as Odenheimer will be having that 1-drop this game. It is Ragavan.
And Mullally happy to specifically have the basic forest whenever there are cards like Blood Moon from Odenheimer's side of the table.
Yeah, that would be nice there, but the turn 2 play is Simic Growth Chamber, and I'm seeing this Ragavan. I'm thinking about a second land, I'm thinking about a treasure token, and this is going to be a big check for that Blood Moon for one of those Molten Rains. We'll see what happens as Ragavan does rumble across. Mullally to 18.
Oh, fastest treasure throw in history.
All right, here's Marsh Flats, and the Blood Moon hits the table before the land. That is bad news for Connor Mullally.
So the nice thing about having that basic forest is traditionally you do see Amulet Titan decks with a bunch of Besejus in their deck, and Malele's doing exactly that as well. 3 copies of them in the main deck. So this is not lights out, despite Malele having such a non-basic land strategy.
Pyroclasm will take care of the Ragavan. Notably, the Simic Growth Chamber being a mountain makes that castable. A little bit of a follow-up for Odheimer, going to get back on the battlefield with a Johnny, but a flooded mountain as the land drop.
I think Malele's happy with this turn cycle. In a lot of ways, he's just trying to create spots where he gets another untapped step over and over, and trying to keep Odheimer off the table is a means to that end.
Makes sense. Here is Spelunking, 2 Crumbling Vestige entering the battlefield this turn.
Listen,
Crumbling Mountain.
Yeah, we've been loose with card names this match. Those are mountains.
A Johnny and Token Rumble across. 4th land there for Odheimer, but no additional pressure. Malele to 15, making a 5th land drop.
I mean, Malele's 1 land from just casting a Primeval Titan the old-fashioned way.
Yes, and here's a Green Sun's Unit for 3.
I'm expecting this to be a Dryad of the Elysian Grove. I don't see a Zeus as in the 75, though I guess the card 6 could come out.
Yeah. 6 would be, I guess it's the exact same size as Dryad of Elysian Grove.
Dryad notably getting Malele out from under this Blood Moon if it sticks.
Yes, yeah, some layers action in effect, where the Dryad will give the mountains all basic land types after the fact.
Is that the 2nd layer, I want to say?
That's a tremendous question.
Or is it maybe 7.2?
I don't even know if that is a technical actual term.
Oh,
but
it is.
Define's going to be Dryad of the Elysian Grove. I direct all layers questions to my judge friends.
Okay, well, let's see. Malele directing a Boreal Grazer to the battlefield, but no land to put in.
Yeah, I think mostly just trying not to die to these creatures, and the Grazer jumps in front of the cat. You don't want to jeopardize that Dryad, get that tagged by a Galvanic Discharge, so that makes sense.
What time is it?
It's prime time. Here comes Primeval Titan. There was the 6th land for Malele, and the Dryad in play. We could see some pretty nasty stuff even just this turn.
Well, so it's complicated. So Spelunking means these lands could enter untapped. Malele having them enter tapped. They are just mountains. Well, one of them is at least.
Yeah, that is true. Kind of setting up, like you were alluding to, with that future possible Beseju for the Blood Moon. Want to get off that table, but when it happens, I believe a Valakut is in tow.
This is a lot of the strength of the Amulet Titan deck, is at the end of the day, Colossal Dreadmaw is not that bad. The problem with a Colossal Dreadmaw, 6/6 Trampler, is that it's hard to tap 6 land.
Yes.
Once it's there, that Primeval Titan is the biggest kid at the playground.
Large and or in charge.
I'd go with and.
Yeah, and works for me. Ocelot Pride certainly isn't going to be able to rumble with it.
And now there's this interesting game of cat and mouse where, I mean, literally
cat and giant.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Where attacking with this Primeval Titan is fairly hard to justify whenever it could theoretically just transform a Shani.
That is true, yeah. And with Odheimer at 14, a little bit of trample damage is not necessarily where you want to be. There's been a lot of turns where Odheimer has not really played anything. You have to really wonder what's in hand. With all these mountains and that basic plains can realistically cast, I think, any spell in the deck outside of Escaping Flage.
I believe you are correct. I'm double-checking what would make sense here that is not just copies of lands.
Right.
Maybe Static Prison is a bit awkward, but I kind of assume that Primeval Titan would be exiled at the moment if that were the answer.
Yeah. Here comes Primeval Titan and Dryad. Malele is going to see what lands he wants to find. Player West and Lotus Field enter the battlefield as mountains.
I would also believe Wrath of the Skies is a card that could have come in. That's one of those catch-alls that the first copy doesn't hurt if you're trying to get your opponent's Urza's Sagas.
Sure. Cat jumps in front of the Dryad. Johnny will transform as Primeval Titan connects for 6. Odheimer down to 8.
Okay, interesting spot on Malele's side where all of a sudden this Ajani is threatening to maybe go after Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Spelunking number 2, that's all well and good. Primeval Titan number 2.
Ooh, that is capital W, capital G, well and good.
Yeah, no ors about that one.
No, absolutely not. There's not even an and. That's just an ampersand.
I will fuse well and good. Shifting woodland and a bounce land entering the battlefield. That's all kind of immaterial because we are, as you kind of alluded to, playing a Colossal Dreadmaw is large and in charge style game.
This is also the thing where I think a lot of things that you'll hear people say about deck thinning are overblown most of the time. These Primeval Titans have taken 8 cards out of the deck or something at this point, which is the point where it starts to matter.
Yes. Aftermath. Analyst enters the fray, and Odenheimer leaves it, as we are going to go to game number 3.
Yeah, and I think that last game really just highlights a lot of why it's important to have more pressure than disruption. A lot of the time whenever you're on the Boros side of things, whenever you're an aggro deck, your cards are not going to scale very well, and your disruptive pieces, the end that they are serving is letting you actually apply pressure turn over turn, not extend the game.
Right, and something that's kind of significant, you were mentioning these 4 Molten Rains being a big deal on Odenheimer's sideboard. You have to think that with Mullally just playing a Primeval Titan for 6, Blood Moon turning off the Simic Growth Chamber was fine, but a Molten Rain on that turn 2 could have actually been game-ending, right? There's no Pyroclasm on turn 2 if that happens.
Right.
So we'll watch that, and certainly with Odenheimer on the plate for game number 3. Do you expect there's going to be any changes here going to the 3rd game?
The big thing I would expect is for Odenheimer to more or less be more interested in applying pressure and less interested in disrupting whenever he gets to play from ahead.
Sure, that makes sense. Yes, we're playing a Spotlight Series and open entry event this weekend, but SCG Con, we do have some a little bit more prestigious tournaments coming up. SCG Con Orlando, it's going to be featuring, actually this is actually our Spotlight Series, but significantly about this event, it's going to be Standard, and it's going to be the rotation of Standard, planetary rotation, as Edge of Eternities will release and rotate Standard, so it's going to be a pretty new format.
Yeah, I think the first big event after rotation is just one of the most exciting events that you ever get to see in Magic, right? It has we always say it has the wild, wild west vibe, where everyone just kind of gets to say, no, I think this is the best thing. And you really do not know what people are going to be bringing to the table. So it's always fun to watch. It's always fun to play. You're going to want to be there or watching it August 29th through 31st.
Yes, hashtag SCGCon Orlando. You can find information at starcitygames.com/SCGCon. We got to get my diction down at some point this weekend.
Why? All right, it looks like we have Mullally going down to at least 6, but this Amulet Titan deck in general is pretty forgiving on the mulligan front.
Yes, both forgiving and looking for very specific things. This is the kind of deck that, it's been a lot of years at this point, but the update to the mulligan rule, the London mulligan, being able to actually look at 7 cards when you're looking for a very specific thing and combination of things, Amulet Titan is a deck that mulligans well.
Right, and some of that is rooted in it has so many cards that basically just completely undo a mulligan by themselves, right? Every bounce land it draws is kind of 2 land cards. Urza's Saga is obviously able to put you up a bunch of resources, though after that last game, I suspect that Mullally sideboarded a bunch of those out. They're pretty bad in the face of a lot of the enchantment destruction, the Blood Moons, and so on. But in general, like you said, there are some cards that are just so much better than the rest of them, and the combinations of things that Mullally can have incentivizes him to find a better hand rather than settling for an okay one.
Yeah, and for players who are trying to, for example, win a modern RCQ, I think what you just said about playing against Amulet, that's a pretty good insight. It's pretty common for these Amulet players to board out, at least trim on the card Urza's Saga, because there's so many cards that are hostile to it in the environment. They play enough lands that they can easily get away with that.
It's one of those cards that's really cool where it feels like it might even be, I don't want to say too strong for Modern, but it feels like one of the strongest cards in the format a lot of the time, but it is balanced against the fact that the things that it's doing, it is soft to so many forms of hate.
Yeah, I think that Thraben Charm sinkhole on the Urza's Saga, that pretty much defined game 1.
Right. Ooh, tap lands and passes?
Yeah, this is pretty reminiscent of game 1 so far. We'll see exactly what Odenheimer is going to get in the battlefield with, as we see a fetch for the Surveil land once again. The Elegant Parlor. Tolarian West on turn 1 for Mullally. That one's not going to be sinkholeable immediately.
I have a feeling it may be finding its way back in the hand soon.
That's often where it goes.
Yeah, pretty rare that you're hoping to tap it for blue. Well, unless it's feeding itself, of course.
Right, yes. Ooh, Ragavans for Valdover. I think that's a sign of strength for Odenheimer's hand.
Right, that's a spot where a lot of times when you keep a 7, you're missing one thing, right? In this case, I would guess Odenheimer is maybe landlight and kind of has the rest of the mixture of threats and just 1 or 2 disruption pieces and just wants that the land drops component to be able to play the game.
Odenheimer fetches to 18 for a basic plains.
And I believe that's a Goblin Bombardment.
I believe you.
Thanks.
It looks like enchantment on the type line. Bombardment check, that tracks.
Interesting to have no threat before turn 3.
Yes, yeah, pretty slow start. I smell a Molten Rain. We'll see if we can confirm that, as there is Simic Growth Chamber, about as juicy a target as you can get. Arid Mesa fetched for Odenheimer, down to 17. Find the second plains, though, so it's not going to be Molten Rain.
I think Blood Moon Rising.
Could very well be. If you're an Odenheimer fan, you would like to see that. Ocelot Pride and a Johnny. All right. Going to immediately transform that Ajani. I like this layup with Bombardment into a Johnny.
Very cool.
Going to replace that cat token, and because of that red permanent, Ajani is going to go upstairs. Mullally to 17.
Okay, I mean, this is the reason that you would make that sort of play, is if you just say, okay, no, actually, I'm pretty set up. I'm getting pretty close here.
Here's Crumbling Vestige into Spelunking from Mullally. Draw a card off Spelunking. I got to imagine there's a land forthcoming. There is, another Vestige. And that's going to make red mana for Pyroclasm. But the Goblin Bombardment will be able to fire these creatures upstairs, Mullally to 15.
A lot of the strength of that card is it means your creatures they're always worth at least 1.
Yes. Yeah, Odenheimer was not about to just get totally got by that Pyroclasm again. Land number 4, another fetch land. Odenheimer to 16.
Uh-oh.
That's a mountain.
Uh-oh. What are you forecasting?
Well, I think there's some rain in
Heavy
the forecast.
rain.
Tap a 3. There's Molten Rain. And there goes Simic Growth Chamber and 2 of Mullally's lives down to 13. Here's a cat token. We'll call it 12.
Meow.
And those 2 Crumbling Vestiges, not looking great for casting spells at this point in time.
Listen, they're trying their best. So.
Right, this is nice. Simic Growth Chamber. Float a color, pick up one of those Vestiges. Float a colorless, rather, excuse me. Growth Chamber is going to cast Arboreal Grazer. There's a blue and a colorless floating.
All right, currently with that Vestige, 1 mana short of Primeval Titan.
That's horrifying.
I mean, it depends. If the Primeval Titan's on your side.
Right. The Vestige re-enters. It's going to make a blue, and Tolaria West will be transmuted. Finds Summoner's Pact. Yeah, Mullally is hopeful to get that Primeval Titan online next turn.
Okay.
As we go back to Odenheimer.
And all of a sudden, in a lot of ways, this is putting Odenheimer under the gun. You probably need to shut off what Primeval Titan can do, or you need to kill Mullally this turn.
Cat rumbles across. Grazer jumps in front. Johnny will make a second cat, shoot down the Grazer, but most importantly, here's Blood Moon.
Oh, all right. I mean, wow. Okay, this is one of the super disruption heavy hands that this Boros Energy deck is able to put forth, with Odenheimer writing the fact that Ajani is just an army in a can by itself.
Right. Yeah, very cleverly navigated around that Pyroclasm in this game. Got the Bombardment in line first, got that Planeswalker lined up, so this steady stream of cats is coming down. And it will not take very long at all for that Ajani and these cats to close the game, as here is Ocelot Pride added to the mix. Johnny makes a cat. That's going to be 4 points upstairs. Milady to 8. 2 cats will make that 4. There's Flage. Goblin Bombardment, that's going to clean it up. And Nicholas Odenheimer is going to win over Connor Mullally, 2-1, winning round 1.
And something that you highlighted about that third game that I really have a lot of respect for Odenheimer's navigation of that matchup is